Hey guys, what's up? My name is Abstrakt and today we are here at my studio in Italy to show you how I made my track You. Believe it or not, this is my first time ever doing a stream on how I made a track, so I'm giving my best to explain you guys how I made it. And I am not the best English speaker and I am not a music genius, so please guys don't roast me too hard. So before we start, I'd like to tell you a few things about the track. This is one of my favorite tracks I've ever made and also one of the simplest. There are not a lot of single elements in there and that's why this clip won't take too long. And I think it's a great example that you don't need a lot of stems to get a great result. I started this project in quarantine. I remember laying on the carpet and playing with the drums. And basically the rhythm I made was this one right here. So it's a cool drum loop. As some of you may have noticed, the drums are in a triplet rhythm. It gives the song a pretty nice bounce. So let's talk about the kick. Let me quickly switch off all the plugins. So the original kick sounded like this. It's a pretty dirty kick. I EQ'd it a bit. I added a Izotope trash to give it a bit of punch and to distort it a bit. Sounded like this after it. Then I also added a texture plugin. I love it. Okay. And here in this plugin you can add a bunch of sounds. There are a lot of different sounds in there. You got some basic noises like the digital noise, or you can also add some Foley, which is right here, some plastic, clicks, whatever. And I chose some hi-hats and it sounded like this. Then to add some more punch, I added a top kick and it sounded like EQ'd it a bit and also saturated it. Then some interesting stuff going on right here. I also added a kick which you can only hear on the sides. Sounded like this at the beginning. It's also a pretty dirty kick. I EQ'd it a bit, added a saturator, an amp, overdrive, EQ. Then I added a erosion plugin to get back some highs. I added another saturator and I EQ'd out all the frequencies I didn't want to be there. Last but not least, I added a Haas doubler. It moves the sound from the middle to the sides and it sounded like this. And together it sounds like this. It's a pretty nice kick. Then I added a snare, distorted it a bit, added also here a Haas doubler. We got some hi-hats right here. We got a crash. And the difference between the heads over here and the heads over here is that those are sidechained and are docking when the kick and the snare comes in. I quickly explain you guys how I'm doing my sidechain. Basically all I do is I draw the exact same drum rhythm in MIDI. I create a group of all the stems I want to be sidechained, and I add 2 LFO tools, one for the kick, one for the snare. Then I send the MIDI from the kick to the LFO tool 1, the snare to the LFO tool 2, and I turn on the note retrick, and every time now the kick or the snare is hitting, also the sidechain is triggered, and you can see it right here. I like this technique way more than adding a simple compressor and turning on the sidechain. This way I can make sure that the volume is pretty much down at 0 and the kick and the snare punches through the mix. Once I had the drums, I knew pretty much in which direction the track should go. In this particular situation, I knew the track is going to be a chilled song, a floomy vibe song. I tried a bunch of different melodies, but I wasn't satisfied with any of them. Days later, I was sitting on my terrace, and suddenly one melody popped into my head. I recorded it on my phone, and it sounded like this. Dun 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 dun. Yeah, sorry for that, my voice sounds terrible, but it's all about the idea. I reopened Ableton and drew the melody into a MIDI file, and that's how I came out with the bass melody. Pretty nice melody. I used a Spires 80s preset, pretty clean bass. I added a Max Bass plugin to add some harmonics. Then I EQ'd it. I turned up the highs and cut out the lows because I wanted to treat the bass section a little bit different. Then I added a dynamic tube to distort it a bit, and I also added a doubler plugin from Waves to fill the spectrum. The sub bass is basically the same preset, only some different plugins on it. Added a overdrive. I added a Renaissance bass, which is a pretty sick plugin, and I cut out all the highs because we've already got them in the top bass section, and it sounded like this. And together it's a pretty nice bass. So after I made the bass, I started making the intro. So there's a lot of stuff going on in there. We have a crackle. I love crackles a lot. It gives this analog feeling, this kind of lo-fi feeling. I also added a background noise. I basically imported the vocal sample into the granulator, and this sound is triggered pretty randomly. Also gives a nice background sound. Then I added a atmospheric synth, which sounds like this. It's another sample I imported into the granulator, which is this one right here. The cool thing about the granulator is that you can basically get a million different sounds out of it. Let me quickly show this to you. Play it. There are a bunch of different things you can do with a sample in there. I can only recommend you to download it and try it by yourself. It's a pretty nice way to create textures and also melodies. Then I added a Valhalla Reverb. I added a echo, and I EQ'd it, cut out the lows. For the melody, I chose a brassy preset, which sounded like this. It's a pretty nice plugin. Then I added a Izotope vinyl plugin. You can do a lot of things with this one too. You can change the colors. You can add some mechanical sound, some electrical sound. You can even add some scratches. You can add also a bit crusher right here and turn up the vinyl playing sound. I love this plugin too. Then I added a arpeggiator. So let me quickly explain you what I did here. I added a sample from Sanholo. It's a pretty nice sample, and what makes it special is that the attack is pretty late. Also, it's pitched up right here. And it makes it sound really, really good. I added a EQ, I added also a reverb again, I added a echo and filtered it out a bit. The filter opens up towards the drop. Pretty cool future bass arpeggiator. After that, I added a 808 right here to introduce the drop. It's basically a sample I downloaded from Splice again. Some overdrive, some amps to distort it a bit. And filtered out towards the drop. Then I copied the vocal chops and simplified them a little bit. and move them into the intro section. They sound like this. It's basically the same as the one in the drop, it's just filled in and gets brighter towards the drop. After that, I added a simple sweep up, and I also added some lasers, getting louder, double tempo up. I love lasers. Then for the vocal, I wanted something special, not one of those everyday EDM vocals. So I had this clip from Sarah Lioness in my head, which I saved on YouTube some months before. It's basically a answering machine recording from a girl speaking to his ex-boyfriend. I love the vocals, so I wrote Sarah a message and she responded pretty quickly. And so we set up a contract and I got the rights to use the vocal and was able to finish the track. So the vocals sounded like this.
Hey, I'm kind of glad you didn't pick up. I kind of just called to hear your voice. I miss you. I've been thinking about you, and I've been thinking about our love and how much I miss you.
Love them. So I had to freeze them because I was using a RX7 plugin from Izotope, which is pretty heavy. Because I wanted to filter out some of the background noise because the volume was too high and you couldn't barely hear the vocal itself. Then I cut out the lows, I compressed it a bit and also added a Pro Q3 to clean it up, also a vinyl plugin which I showed you before, and I also added a doubler to fill the spectrum. And all together it sounds like this.
Hey, I'm kind of glad you didn't pick up. I kind of just called to hear your voice. I miss you. I've been thinking about you, and I've been thinking about our love and how much I miss you.
After that I made the vocal chops in the drop. I'm pretty proud of them, and the funny thing is that they are probably the most downloaded from Splice. They sound like this. I imported the sample into the sampler and searched the best position for the start point, and I came up with this. And for me this sounded a little bit annoying, so that's why I automated the start point of the sample here and here, and it sounds a lot better with these changes. I added a overdrive, I added a amp, I also added a saturator right here to distort it, and I added a chorus here, right here, to fill the spectrum to make it wider. Then I added a fresh air plugin. It's free from Slate Digital and it brightens up the whole thing. I EQ'd it pretty heavy. Then I added a Valhalla, which is automated, also a autopan, which is also automated. It switched on here at the second break. Then I added another EQ. It's basically a filter. Then I added a echo. I automated the volume at some particular positions, and I added a Pro Q just to clean it up a bit, and I smashed it through the clipper to make sure it's fat enough, and it sounded like this. I also have some more effects going on right here. I sent the signal to the return track, and right here I only added a vintage verb, a Valhalla, and I EQ'd it, and I automated the volume and also the width, which make everything sound more interesting. Sounds like this basically. It pretty much helps to glue the whole drop together, and all together it sounds like this. It's a pretty nice drop. Then at the second part of the drop I introduced the arpeggiator again. I added a sweep up, sweep down to glue the drop and the break, and I also added a drum fill, basically a tom, which is pitched down, heavily distorted, and we have the break part right here.
Around you, hearing your laugh and holding your hand. I think of you every day. I hope and I wish that you're doing okay. I want us to go back to the old days, because I miss you, and I just thought of you.
Break is basically the same as the intro. The only thing that changes here is that the arpeggiator is half tempo, and then we have our second drop right here. And now the interesting part is this one right here. After the second drop we have a 808s coming in. Also the LFO of the vocal chops is switched on right now. There is another arpeggiator right here coming in. It's one I made in Serum. It first was a preset from Fabian Mazur, which I tweaked a bit, and I came up with this. There is a bit of automation going on right here. I added a flanger, then also the release of the sound is changing towards the end of of this section. Also, the detune is going up. Then let's get to my favorite part of the song, a piano. This one right here is from Labs, also pretty sick plugin. Also because it's totally free, you get a bunch of different organic instruments. Then what I did to make it sound lo-fi, I added a sound shifter. It's basically a pitch plugin, and the ratio is controlled by a lo-fi plugin from Ableton itself. Makes also a huge difference. Let me quickly switch it off. This is switched on. I love when the pitch is changing a bit all the time. Sounds great. And I heavily EQ'd it. Another EQ. Then I added the OTT to get out some of the mud. And I added a low cut. Then the vocal chops are coming back in.
Side of the line. I can't hang up. I don't want this to end.
Then also the 808, the atmospheric synth, and the chords are coming back. Also the heads. And we are getting into this final drop. To make it a bit different, I added a downshifter pitch. And I also added a white noise. Then here we have this drum fill right here. I basically added some toms and pitched them down. They are also panned from left to right. Sounds pretty nice on the headphones. And then we are getting into this outro drop part.
Even if things never go back to what we were, what I became so used to, what I thought would be forever.
The whole track is kind of a conversation. In the phrase parts, the woman asks for a second chance, and the drop every time is kind of a positive answer to this. It lets you with an open end, hoping that the woman and the man are getting back together. And this is how I made you guys. As I said before, I am not the big music genius. Like many other producers, I work by ear, and everything I showed you today I learned by myself, and I hope the one or the other could pick up something interesting for himself. And if you've got any other questions, just write them in the comments and I will answer to them. Thank you guys for watching, and also big thanks to NCS for making all this possible.